Hello Summoners and welcome back to another Pro Guides video. My name is Nathan Ng and I'm here with the 12.9 mid-patch update. We'll provide updated tier lists on all 5 roles and follow up on balance changes from the patch. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content like this. Now, let's get started. First, we'll talk about our top laners. We're sort of constantly yo-yoing Kayle back between the OP and S tiers, and for now, she's back in the OP tier, and I think she's going to be there for quite a while. Once next patch hits, she's going to be even stronger, as lower damage overall in the game means that scaling picks are going to be less bullyable in the early game. So, if you want an OP champion to pick up for your pool, Kayle is definitely a good choice as far as long-term investments go. Swain has been underplayed in top lane before, so we didn't really have him on our tier list. But with this mid-scope update making him pretty OP, he's being played in every role but jungle quite a bit, and doing well in all of them. He has all the tools needed to be an S tier top laner. There's even an argument that he could even be in the OP tier, but for now, this is where he lands. He has solid laning, good all-in strength for dueling later, and his team fighting is absolutely insane. His itemization is also pretty flexible, able to build more damage heavy or tankier depending on the enemy comp, as well as being able to grab the utility items like Morellonomicon or Rally's Crystal Scepter. All in all, he's a pick that you 100% should put some effort into learning. With over 1/5 of all Sejuani players playing her top lane, she definitely belongs on this list. We're putting her in the A tier at the moment, but do note that she feels especially powerful when you use her as a counter to champions that have to get into melee range to do damage. Against them, you could consider her S or even OP tier. Olaf gets moved up all the way to the A tier. The mid-scope update has treated him pretty well in the top lane, with him going from the literal bottom of the list to a pretty respectable spot. If you play him well and snowball hard early, he has some incredibly strong 1v9 potential. In that aspect, he's pretty much S or even OP tier. But his Feast or Famine playstyle keeps him limited to the A tier. But if you're just an Olaf Savant, and you find yourself getting those early leads super consistently, you can consider him just as good as the champions in the upper tiers. Sion gets promoted to the B tier. We sort of went overkill when we moved him down to the C tier. Yes, Riot gutted Suicide Sion, making him absolutely abysmal. But let's not forget that it's the only way to play Sion. He's a super beefy champion that can potentially do a lot of damage, so he's still a pretty strong pick when your team needs a frontline. That said, he has enough bad matchups that he can't even go any higher than the B tier, where our situational and matchup reliant champions go. Paulberg gets demoted down to the B tier, and he barely just makes that. There's only really a few good matchups that he has that keeps him from being dropped all the way down to the C tier. Outside of those, there's just a lot of other picks that have a much bigger impact. Now for the jungle, here's our list. Master Yi moves up to the A tier. Even after the nerfs that he got in this patch, he's performing pretty well above average. While there are going to be some games where he's just a little bit rough to play due to either your team comps or the enemies, I think that goes for any pure carry jungler. When it comes to absolutely hard carrying games, no champion does it late game like Master Yi. So if you just want to AFK farm until 2 items and pray that your team doesn't lose the game by that time, he's the best champion in that department. Ekko gets promoted back up to the A tier. Moving him down to the B tier was a little bit harsh. He doesn't really have very much early pressure, so some games will be out of your control, but the same is true for a lot of other scaling picks. What Ekko does have is a very high consistency for an assassin. While most assassins need to snowball really hard to be useful, with Ekko, it's okay to just take it nice and slow. All you really need is Rocket Belt and Lich Bane. This 2-item spike gives you the power to do a huge chunk of damage to squishy champions, and once you get a Rabadons, you can completely one-shot them on your own. The biggest mistake that you can make is building too defensively on him. If you do that, he definitely feels like a B tier pick. But when you do go for full glass cannon and rely on your ultimate to stay alive, you'll have a lot of carry potential. Talon drops down to the B tier. A lot of picks are in the B tier because they are situational. In the right game, they can be much higher, with some champs being OP against the right comp. Then in other games, they look completely useless, being hard countered and providing absolutely no impact in rough matchups. But in Talon's case, he's in the B tier simply because he's an absolutely mid pick. Regardless of the enemy comp, he's always going to be Feast or Famine, and in many games, even a big lead isn't really enough to hard carry. He can definitely snowball hard. If you have 3 losing lanes, he's just never going to be the type of champion to 1v9. Now that we have some more info on Taliyah after her mid-scope update, we can pretty confidently say that she drops down to the B tier in the jungle. Against slower paced enemy junglers, she's super effective, since you can just zip around the map and get a lot more done than them early, and snowball that into a huge lead. But against other fast-paced junglers, where you don't really have it your way, you'll find that she struggles pretty bad. She needs that early lead to be actually impactful later on into the game. However, I will say, if you know how to dictate the pace of the game, she's absolutely bonkers. Twitch has spent a lot of time in the lowest levels of our tier list, but now we can confidently say that he deserves to be moved up to at least the B tier. Against certain jungle opponents, he can be pretty risky, but if the enemy jungler is low threat, and or you have an easy to gank lane for, he can actually be an incredibly strong pick. Once you get past the very early levels of the game, and you have some AD and points into your E, Twitch's jungle clear isn't nearly as bad as the early game. So, once you reach that point, be sure to clear out some camps between your ganks to keep up your income and XP. This is a crucial difference between a successful high elo Twitch jungle player and the ones that just flop so hard in the lower levels of play. While Olaf's mid-scope update has made him a pretty good top laner, he is not having nearly as much success in the jungle. But we aren't moving him back down to the D tier just yet. We're gonna give people a lot more time to get used to him and see how things turn out. Now, here's our mid lane tier list. Taliyah gets bumped up to the OP tier. She's become super lane dominant and can take over games in minutes against disrespectful opponents. Her new kit feels a lot more impactful in the mid to late game fights, with her combo being a lot easier to actually land now. Another huge change was the addition of a stun to her E. Before, if a target wasn't too squishy, they could just dash at you and shrug off the extra damage from the rock mines. But now, champions like Irelia and Yasuo will literally stop in their tracks when they try to dash through the wave in an attempt to trade on you. Swain gets moved up to the OP tier. Post-update, he's rolling almost all lane opponents, and with the lower ult cooldown, he's able to transition that lead into being a super impactful mid to late game teamfighter. Now that it's been a few days since the recent 2, we can give our opinions on the champs that have received mid-scope updates. Swain feels much stronger, with him being not just viable, but very strong, in all 4 non-jungle roles in my opinion. As we've already mentioned, a lot of this comes from his ult having much less downtime, and it being more powerful when it's available. We thought Olaf and Taliyah would be both super OP with their new touched up kits, but in the jungle, both of them have been doing pretty bad. That being said, they're definitely doing pretty well as solo laners, with Taliyah being particularly strong. And that leads us to today's question of the day. How do you feel about these recent mid-scope updates? Whether you just want to say how strong you think the champions are, or you have some ideas on how to make them even better, we'd love to see what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Now without further ado, let's get back to the video, shall we? Viktor gets demoted to the A tier, just barely doing good enough to avoid being all the way down in the B tier. It seems like not too long ago, he was absolutely one of the best hard carries in the game, but at the moment, he's barely better than average. Other champions with strong early influence can win the rest of the map before you do. Meanwhile, the other scaling picks take advantage of your low pressure to farm up, and just have more of an impact later on into the game. Lux also gets bumped down to the A tier. She's a good pick for getting consistent results, since she's safe, has wave clear, and can make picks without even sticking her neck out too far. But she also doesn't really have nearly enough 1v9 carrying power to belong in the S tier. You can always be able to provide quite a bit, but you'll very rarely be able to win games without at least 1 or 2 teammates helping you out to carry the load. Pyke gets demoted all the way down to the C tier. I can't say with 100% certainty, since creative players always find weird loopholes, but for now, it really seems like Riot really did succeed in getting rid of Pyke from the mid lane specifically. Now let's move things down to the bot lane. Swain gets promoted to being a very strong S tier pick. He's always been a pretty strong bot laner, but as we went over in previous sections, the update has made scaling up and carrying with him later on into the game a much smoother process. Kog'Maw gets promoted to the S tier. He's been doing way too good lately to belong down in the B tier. He may be an immobile hyper carry, but that doesn't automatically mean that he's just some helpless baby that can't do anything on his own. Kog has a surprisingly strong early game, so you don't have to wait forever to reach that point of the game where he can actually do stuff. I'd say that in the vast majority of 2v2 situations, he can actually trade better than the other bot lane, as long as you fight around his W's cooldown. Another huge bonus of Kog'Maw is that he can itemize pretty defensively, with you having as many as 3 item slots to dedicate to durability. It's not uncommon at all to see Kog'Maw with Wit's End, Randuin's Omen, and Titanic Hydra, making him very difficult to bring down, while he still dishes out insanely high DPS himself. Miss Fortune gets promoted to the A tier. She's not doing crazy good right now, but she's definitely better than the other B tier picks, so her tier list placement needs to reflect that. She's definitely not the greatest pick for 1v9 in games, and can be considered probably the weakest out of all the other champions in the A tier. The one thing that she does super well though is to bully lane. For best results, bring Comet and bring lethality, and you can shut down any laner without exerting too much effort. Taliyah as a bot lane carry obviously isn't doing nearly as well as mid lane Taliyah, so we're moving her down to the C tier. I think a lot of that is to do with them lowering how much you can do with her combo. Previously, she worked best when paired with CC supports that can lock down opponents and make it easy for you to one-shot them. With the potential for that being lowered, she just isn't nearly of a threat to other bot laners. To finish things off, we have our supports. Now that more people are getting past this unique learning curve, Bard's doing really well after his last buff. So we're moving him up to the S tier. Like we predicted, the more successful build has ended up including Mandy, leaning more into his roaming gank-heavy playstyle rather than just playing him as a utility bot in bot lane and teamfights. Brand has been performing poorly enough that we're moving him down to the B tier. He's an okay pick when you need a magic damage threat in the support role, but there are plenty of other mage options that can do everything much better, with more consistency. Pyke mid isn't the only thing doing worse. He's bombing pretty hard as a support too, so we're moving him down to the C tier. Maybe it's just more people trying to play him now, but either way, he's outperformed by the vast majority of other champs in the role. I still hate him though, and I would delete him from the game if it was my choice. And that wraps up our 12.9 mid-patch update. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on where the champions fall in the tier list in the comment section down below. Also, check out our description for a link to join our Discord community. Best of luck on Summoner's Rift, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.